The cabin on the mountain had no doors when they first found it. Its roof sagged like an old man's shoulders, and the windows were gaping holes filled with spider webs and rainwater stains. The floor creaked and moaned with every gust of wind, and wild ivy had forced its way through the cracked walls, claiming the space as its own. Most people who stumbled across it would have shaken their heads and walked away. But to William and Lillian Kata, the broken cabin was not just a pile of rotting logs. It was a chance, a final place where they could live out their days in peace, far from the echoes of heartbreak. William and Lillian were not strangers to hardship. They had lived most of their lives in a small southern town, where every coin was stretched and every kindness given, even when it hurt. They never had children of their own, though they had prayed for them for years. When it became clear that their prayers would remain unanswered, they opened their hearts in a different way. They became adoptive parents. Over the years, they welcomed 3 children into their home. Each child came from pain, abandonment, neglect, or worse. William worked long hours at a lumber mill, his hands always rough and bleeding from splinters, while Lillian washed other people's clothes, ironed their sheets, and scrubbed their kitchens. Every dollar went to keeping food on the table and shoes on growing feet. The children grew under their care. There were birthday cakes baked from scratch, Christmas mornings with handmade toys, and long evenings of homework at the kitchen table. William would sit beside them, patient and steady, while Lillian hummed hymns in the background as she cooked cornbread or stirred beans. They loved those children as fiercely as if they had been born of their own blood. But love, William and Lillian would one day learn, is not always returned in kind. As the children grew into adults, distance began to wedge itself into the family. First came excuses: "I'm busy with work. I'll visit when I get some time off. Things are tight right now. Maybe next month." Then came the silence. Phone calls went unanswered. Letters went unreturned. Birthdays and anniversaries passed with no acknowledgement. At first, Lillian defended them. "They're building their lives. Will, you know how it is. Young folks have their own troubles." William, though quiet by nature, carried the hurt in his chest like a stone. "We gave them everything," he muttered once, late at night when he thought Lillian was asleep. "Everything." The truth they could not say aloud was worse. They had been forgotten. The old family home, once so full of noise, grew unbearably quiet. The children never came back. Not even when Lillian's health began to fail and her knees stiffened so badly she could no longer scrub the floors. Not when William lost his job at the mill after it closed. Not even when bills piled high and food grew scarce. Neighbors pitied them, but pity did not pay for medicine or firewood. Eventually, the Carters lost the house they had lived in for 30 years. One evening, after the last box was loaded into the back of their battered pickup truck, Lillian sat on the porch steps, tears cutting down her cheeks. "Where do we go now?" she asked. William looked toward the mountains in the distance. He remembered the abandoned cabin he had stumbled across years ago while hunting. Broken, forgotten, left to rot much like they felt themselves. "We'll go where nobody can take anything else from us," he said. The cabin welcomed them with the smell of damp wood and mildew. Holes in the roof let the rain pour in, and raccoons had left droppings in every corner. There was no electricity, no running water, no warmth. It was little more than a ruin, but William and Lillian were not people who gave up. They had built their lives with their own hands before, and they would do it again. 4 weeks, William worked from sunrise to sundown. He patched the roof with old tin sheets he salvaged from a junkyard, hammered boards over broken windows, and cut fallen trees for firewood. His hands, swollen and scarred with age, bled anew with every nail he drove. Meanwhile, Lillian worked inside. She scrubbed the floors until the grime came off in black streaks. She sewed curtains from scraps of fabric, washed the walls with vinegar, and polished what little furniture they had salvaged. Slowly, painfully, the cabin transformed. Spring came, and with it, a burst of life around the cabin. Lillian planted a small garden, tomatoes, greens, beans, and herbs. She carried water in tin pails from a stream at the foot of the hill, humming softly as she poured it over the fragile sprouts. William built a chicken coop from scraps of wire and wood, and soon the clucking of hens filled the mornings. He carved a rocking chair from oak, smoothing it carefully so Lillian could rest her knees. When neighbors from the valley below stumbled across their home, they were stunned. What had once been a rotting shack now looked alive, like something out of a storybook. Flowers bloomed along the path. The roof stood strong, and smoke curled cheerfully from the chimney. "You've made this place a paradise," one of them said. William only smiled faintly. "It's enough," he replied. But even in their new paradise, shadows lingered. Every evening, when the sun dipped behind the mountains, William and Lillian would sit on the porch side by side. There were 2 other rocking chairs William had built, waiting silently, untouched. They had built them for the children, should they ever come to visit. But the chairs stayed empty. Sometimes, Lillian's eyes filled with tears as she looked at them. "Do you think they'll ever come?" "Will," she whispered. William would take her hand, rough and calloused, and squeeze it gently. "Maybe one day," he said, though his voice betrayed the doubt in his heart. Years passed in the quiet rhythm of mountain life. The couple grew older, slower. William's back bent, and his steps grew short. Lillian's hands trembled when she tried to sew, and her eyesight dimmed. Once, on her birthday, she wrote letters to all 3 children. The words were simple. "We miss you. We love you. Please come see us before it's too late." She waited by the road every day that month, watching for a car that never came. The letters were never answered. On a cold autumn morning, William awoke to find Lillian too weak to rise from bed. Her breath rattled, and her skin felt thin as paper. He stayed by her side, holding her hand, feeding her broth with a spoon, whispering prayers. One evening, as the fire crackled low, she turned her face toward him. "Will," she murmured, "if they don't come back, promise me you'll keep the garden alive." His voice broke. "Don't talk like that, Lil." But she only smiled faintly. "This cabin is our home now. It was broken, just like us, but we made it beautiful. That's what matters." Not long after, she closed her eyes and did not open them again. William buried her by the garden, beneath the tall oak tree where she had once liked to sit. He carved her name into a piece of wood and placed it at the head of the grave. After that, the cabin grew quieter than ever. William still tended the garden, fed the chickens, and mended the roof, but his movements slowed. Each night he sat on the porch, staring at the 3 empty rocking chairs. He never stopped waiting. Years later, hikers stumbled upon the cabin. They found it neat and well cared for, though the garden had grown wild and the coop stood empty. Inside, they found photographs on the wall, faded pictures of 3 smiling children held in the arms of a younger William and Lillian. In the corner sat 4 rocking chairs. Only one showed signs of wear. The hikers asked around in nearby towns and learned the story. An elderly black couple, abandoned by the children they had raised, who had turned a ruined cabin into a paradise with nothing but their love and labor. And though the world had forgotten them, the cabin remained a quiet testament to love, resilience, and heartbreak. Because paradise, after all, is not a place. It is what you build with your hands, even when your heart has been broken.